Okay, welcome everyone. I was just stretching. Okay, as you can see, the title of my talk, it's quite different from what I listed on the, what's it called? Program, but at the last minute when I was making my slides, I thought this would be kind of a more timely presentation. And if you're still interested in Snark programming languages, I would recommend you go to the freeform workshop that maybe we'll do about it. I guess I just wanted to do a few more shout outs. First of all, okay, let's see. Oh yeah, also if you know anything about constructing elliptic curves and are interested in helping, I would get in touch with Dara or me. Dara's over there. And yeah, okay. So, right, crypto heaven, crypto hell. These are, I think, things that in some ways we have very intuitive understandings of, but in the course of this talk, maybe we'll make our understanding more complete, okay? So, oh, the animations don't work. That's too bad. So, is there any way to fix the animations? No, that's too bad. Okay, well, you'll have to bear with me. Right, so I'm Izaak. I work on Coda. That's this. It's a cryptocurrency protocol. I also work on Snarky. It's Snark's programming language. Coda is pretty cool because it uses recursive composition of Snarks to compress the blockchain. It's kind of similar to things a lot of other people are doing now. And the upshot is, anyone can verify the Snark even on a phone. Before that, I was a small child. So I guess I just want to frame this talk by talking about our role as, stewards of technology. So this is a drawing I made of, it's a very subtle metaphor for what technology can be. So on the one hand, it says crypto there. So that's a user's guide to this drawing. Right, so here we have a gun, and here we have a flower. As I said, it's a very subtle metaphor. And I guess the point is that, technology is not, it's not something that sort of wants anything independent of the people who use it, right? So you can pick up this thing and I suppose you can use it to kill someone, but you can also use it to give someone a nice day by looking at a beautiful flower. And that's really going to be the theme of this talk. About, what are the ways that we can use this thing in a nice way, and what are the things that we can use this in a maybe not so nice way. I guess I intend this to be sort of a Dickens type situation, where we'll see the ghosts, the Christmas ghosts. I think that's part of the New Testament. I'm not sure. And maybe learn something about our future, what it could be, because it's not set in stone, right? We can still repent and go to Tiny Tim and so on. So, and I also just want to shout out this film, or this series, this documentary series, which is called All Watched Over by Machines of Love and Grace. I think it's almost required viewing for someone working in technology to watch this. To just understand what can go wrong. Because there are people who have ideas about what they want technology to do, and then there's what actually happens given the existing power structures. So, okay, so this crypto heaven, right? That's what we want to start with. What's the positive vision of the future? Right, so I think one very strong element of a positive vision of crypto heaven is freedom from surveillance. Probably most people here would agree. I don't know. Can I get a quick poll? Who thinks this sounds good? Yeah, okay. So, here we have, I don't know, Facebook, Google, the NSA, Visa, and they're all trying to spy on you, right? So, why is this bad? Maybe let me just say a few things just, for posterity. One, it's probably, I don't even need to explain this to most people in this room, but mass surveillance, it leads to self-policing. You can read Foucault. He likes to talk about it. And also, the more a malicious person knows about you, the more they can manipulate you. So, for example, this is how Facebook. Well, this is what Facebook does. I guess this is their social function. They, amass a large amount of data so that they can create this machine that allows people to pay to manipulate billions of people at once. And in terms of, I guess, the status of this vision being implemented, it sort of works, I guess, for some things today. Obviously, people in this room are trying to make it work more. Oh, hey, this slide was totally different, but okay. But there's a long way to go, as we know, even in the simplest things like web browsing. But anyway, that's the one positive vision of the future. I think another one that just kind of I think is actually good in practice, and so I just want to give it a shout out, is like easy and cheap remittances. So I don't really have too much to say about this, other than it seems to sort of work today, as long as you have exchanges at both ends, and it actually helps people who had previously been subject to exorbitant fees. So I think that's like that's like what you got to keep your eye on, right? Like, is this making people's lives better, or is it making people's lives worse? I think another thing which is really underexplored, so I just want to maybe raise consciousness, is the concept of a voluntary, democratic, or participatory economy. This is just a vision. I have specific proposals if you want to talk about it, but I'm not going to explain one. But it kind of comes from the following line of thinking. Like, Bitcoin, I mean, even now when you think about it, it's kind of this crazy thing, right? Like, someone sat at their computer, they typed maybe some ones, they typed some words into their C compiler, and at the end, there was a whole economic system. Obviously, it relates to our existing system, but it's kind of its own thing. And you can set the rules however you like. So with that in mind, who participates in the existing economic system? Probably everyone. Yeah, then you know that participation is basically compulsory. You have no choice, or you'll, die. So, moreover, it has a very specific form. Like, all of our interactions with each other about economic things are essentially mediated by markets, right? And that's this whole kind of mechanism by which economic information is propagated throughout the system. The main one, anyway. But it's just one mechanism, and there's no reason to just pick that one, except maybe historical accident. So there are many other mechanisms that one can imagine, and I don't know, why don't we try them, right? So one can imagine more voluntary or more participatory systems that would probably produce better outcomes for the people involved in them. So I think there's a lot of underexplored potential for good here. People never talk about it, right? It's there's this crazy concept that we can make our own economic system with arbitrary rules, and people are like, okay, I know what we'll do. We'll recreate the entire existing credit infrastructure, and the entire we'll just replicate the existing distribution of wealth and so on. So I think it's partly just it's difficult to imagine things that you don't have experience with, right? And I guess no one ever got fired for whatever they say, buying IBM. So okay, I guess the next thing that I want to talk about is this really cool concept of accountable algorithms. And this is, if you're interested in snarks, this is like a snarky thing. Here we have, as an illustration, this guy who represents, I don't know, evil, basically, or anyway, probably most people know. Who knows who this is? No. Okay. So, right, he's kind of an easy punching bag, but I think justifiably so. So the concept of an accountable algorithm, the phrase is the title of this guy Joshua Kroll's thesis. It's a very cool thesis. He's this guy who was I guess he's like a law law and technology guy. I don't know, maybe someone in this room knows him. Does anyone know him? Okay. Huh? He's in computer science? Okay, yeah. So he has this really cool thesis, which is about using snarks, basically for this technique of accountable algorithms. And he gives the following definition, which I think is really great. He says, okay, a process or entity is accountable for a decision if that process is A, consistent with the legal, political, and social norms, okay, that define the context of the operation of that algorithm. And second, this fact is publicly evident. So anyone can verify that this process is indeed consistent with those social norms, those values, those ideas. And you know, why is this important? Well, existing systems are even if they claim to be consistent with our social values, they're not verifiably so. So we have like zero idea, for example, if someone claims, yeah, we're doing this great thing, we're protecting our privacy, and so on. There's no way to actually check that. So I think it's best just to see an example. Yeah, it sucks about the animation because there's way too much text. But don't look at all of it. Just look at me. Watch the hands. So some lenders, like Quicken Loans, for example, are known to have had, as recently as 2018, pretty racist lending practices. Basically, like, you know, charging higher interest rates to people of different races, which I think almost everyone agrees is bad. So what can we do about this? Well, we can use accountable algorithms. The idea is basically we come to a consensus amongst ourselves and, you know, amongst the people who are actually affected by these practices on, you know, how do we mitigate these biases? Okay, so we come up with some machine learning research about how to like train your model so that it doesn't output racist decisions, or you know, gender bias or bias based on sexuality or ability or whatever. And to see a concrete example, the idea is like, you got Quicken Loans, right? They will learn some program which takes in someone's user information and decides whether or not that person's creditworthy, quote unquote. You know, should we give a loan to this person or not? Well, what you can do is you can compel, you know, by law, Quicken Loans to basically publish a snark which proves, hey, this program P, or maybe even a commitment to this program P, was trained in a way which is compliant with existing norms about bias mitigation techniques. Like, in other words, we really trained this in such a way that we really tried to make it not racist. Now, every time a user submits their information to Quicken Loans to have them make a decision about their creditworthiness, the program from Quicken Loans can return both the result R and also a ZK snark which proves, yeah, that program that we proved was compliant with the bias mitigation techniques, if you actually run it on that user's input Q, it'll actually produce the output that I told you, R. And again, like, it's ZK snark, so if they don't want to, or if you know, we can't compel them to, Quicken doesn't even need to reveal the source of the program P if it's proprietary or whatever. So this is pretty cool because it means that A, we can actually have, we can compel people to verifiably comply with, you know, the norms that we agree on as people in our society. And you know, the techniques of cryptography are extremely powerful, right, and underutilized here. And I guess I would just add, like, you know, you could say, oh, just have regulatory checks or whatever. I don't think it's enough because you see examples like Volkswagen, right? Who knows about this whole thing? Yeah, where they just like they had their machine just say like, oh, if I'm in the middle of an emissions test, then run super efficiently, else you know, don't. Okay, and I guess I just want to add, like, this probably sounds, to people who have programmed with snarks, this probably sounds like horribly insane, right? Like, oh, what are we going to do? Like, do a whole gradient descent inside of a snark? That's horrible. That's crazy. I think it's only horrible in terms of, well, let me put it this way. So we did a workshop last week in London, and these two attendees, they used Snarky to create, basically do a linear regression inside of a snark. So this is like a cool proof of concept. The code's online, I think. So, you know, it's only insane in terms of maybe the amount of computing resources, but not for a giant company. So like, maybe this would cost, $1 million to train the neural net inside of a Snark or whatever, but it's like, great, like Facebook has $1 million. Like, let's just make them pay $1 million to train the Snark, or to do the training inside of the Snark. It's possible. Okay, so that's some of Crypto Heaven. I hope everyone enjoyed their stay, because it's time for Crypto Hell. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So I guess this week has kind of been pretty bad in some ways, or good for Crypto Hell, mostly because of, I'm sure everyone's familiar with Zuckbucks. There's been a lot of chat about it. It's a popular topic of conversation. So I guess, I just want to spend some time examining this, putting out into the world why I think this is a bad idea, and, if you disagree with me, then, I don't know, at me on Twitter or whatever. So the idea of Zuckbucks, we're going to make a private cryptocurrency, so it's a cryptocurrency which is controlled by private companies. We'll aggressively market it, in words from a Forbes article, in developing nations, which are these ones here on the map. And then these people, specifically these people, and whoever pays them $10 million decides who in those countries will be able to spend their money and on what. We all know that Facebook has a sterling reputation as a steward of the public trust, so it's probably gonna be really good for actual people and gonna work out well. Of course, this is like completely ridiculous. The reality of this situation is that the operations of this network are, even if they claimed they were doing things good, right? They're completely unverifiable by people in the public. It's kind of theater of blockchain. The explicit goal is to extract rent from people who live in these countries, which are the poorest countries on the planet. This is action taken totally without consulting these people at all. So you have these people over here kind of saying like, oh yeah, well, I know you have your national currency, but we're going to come in and it's going to be better for you. And just like to be, totally spell it out, Facebook's business model, like the way that they make money and their role in society is to provide access to a machine for manipulating people. That's what they do, right? If you're an advertiser, you go onto advertisers.facebook.com, you type, hey, I want people to see this, and then they just put it in billions of people's heads. Yeah, I don't know, like, let's not make that machine more efficient, right? And let's not give them control over the ability of people to spend money how they want. Yeah, I would say this is pretty pure crypto hell, as you can see by this agonized person. So I guess like some things that I would talk about if I had more time. There's this like general problem in cryptocurrency that people I think spend a lot of time talking about actually. This one, I don't know, like people are talking about it, but I feel like people don't use strong enough language to describe it. So I hope to shift the Overton window with regards to the strength of the language people use to describe the situation. But this other thing, yeah, DAOs run amok. I think this is a popular topic. Probably a lot of people know about proof of work. It consumes like a substantial percentage of the world's electricity. For what? I mean, it's kind of unnecessary. Assassination markets, I think, are also sort of an example of this. Just algorithms which are sort of out of control of the hands of anyone. I think tax evasion is also, yeah, it's hard, right? Because taxes also fund evil things, so it's kind of hard to say. But so the rest of the talk, I just want to like maybe do a little bit of analysis, and I don't want to just say like, oh yeah, like there's shitty stuff happening. Maybe we could do some good stuff. I don't think that's, let's try and do a little better. Let's try and understand why this is happening a little bit. How do we get more crypto heaven and less crypto hell? So like, how do we make more good things happen? I think it's helpful to look at how crypto affects the world. This slide made a lot more sense with animations, I promise. On the top, you have kind of a naive model, I suppose, of how cryptography and cryptocurrency stuff affects the world, right? So you have cryptographers and protocol designers. They're sort of the source of all new things. Those go into pipe into implementers. Implementers do this for a while. Then that gets handed off to application developers, marketers, project managers, whatever, designers. And then at the end, a product spits out, and that's what affects the world. But that's a pretty incomplete picture because, I mean, imagine the animations on this slide were working, and that was the only thing that you could see. You wouldn't be able to look at that and anticipate the effects that cryptography or whatever would have on the world, right? It's not a predictive model. The reason is because those cryptographers, they don't work on something out of nothing. They work on something. I'm not saying this is the only reason people work on things, but at least a substantial motivator is, well, coming from people who have the power to get people to do things, right? People don't just sit around and some people do, right? And do things of their own accord, but a lot of people at least do some things because someone is giving them a reason to, monetarily or otherwise. And I think, when you look at this, you have a more complete understanding of why things that are happening, right? So I'd like to maybe suggest a way to change this. This is the first method. And I want to say this method, sadly, only applies if you have the power to get people to do things. This is mostly money. But there will be another method. So, if you don't have a lot of money, just hang tight. There will be another method. So, right, as I said, it only applies for some people. But if you happen to fall into one of the following categories of VC, DARPA, or maybe a major decision maker in how cryptocurrency dev funds get allocated, then there is something you can do. Actually, there's a very simple two-step guide. The first thing is, first of all, I guess there's a 0 step, which is develop a sense of your own personal ethics. Okay, so that's step 0. Step 1 is only fund projects which are good, according to your own personal sense of ethics. And step 2, and this is one I think that people often forget, is don't fund evil projects. It's kind of can be hard to remember. And also I would say, try not to work with people who fund or work on evil projects. Okay? That's what I would recommend if you fall into one of into this first category. The second method applies for the rest of these people here, and in some ways it's a very similar method. One, work on good projects which are good according to your own personal sense of ethics, and 2, don't work on evil projects. And again, try not to work with people who fund or work on evil projects according to your own sense of ethics. I'm not going to tell you. I mean, I told you what I think is good and evil, but it's something that you need to obviously develop a decision on yourself. The other thing I would say is that expertise is relatively scarce in this industry. I think people get that, but really, like, there's not, and this is changing a little bit, but like, there's not that many people who understand zero knowledge proofs well, or crypto stuff in general. So this means you have an above average amount of power, right? Like, you have more power to influence things because things are more impossible to do without you, okay? And the other thing that I would add is, like, in our society, money and power are closely related to each other. And going back to the Bitcoin slide, or the participatory economies thing, it's weird, right? Like, Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies are these things which are created just by people. They're not with they're not created by a government, except in some cases, I guess. But they're something that people in principle have some direct control over. So I think there's something interesting and unexplored there about people having more influence through that. And so maybe, under this fact, maybe we could go with method 1 where we have money somehow. So okay, now after all that, I just want to shout out, we're doing the Snark challenge. You got to do your plug. We're giving away, right, so money to speed up Snarks. So over $100,000. We have lots of great sponsors, including the Zcash Foundation, and others, 0x, Tezos, Filecoin. And, you know, I don't know. It should be cool. So it's if you're interested in like hacking GPUs or WebAssembly stuff or coming up with cool new curves, Google Snark Challenge.